My beloved child, listen carefully, because what I am about to tell you is not ordinary, not random, and definitely not a coincidence. Somewhere behind you, in a place you thought was closed forever, someone from your past recently saw you again, even if only for a few seconds, and that single moment shattered the version of reality they had been clinging to for years. They expected to feel nothing. They expected indifference. They expected that time had erased you. Instead, what hit them was a silent shock that went straight through their chest. Your presence did not scream. It did not beg. It did not explain. It simply existed, calm and transformed, and that was enough to unsettle them deeply. In that instant, memories they buried without closure rushed back, not gently, but all at once, forcing them to face the truth they avoided. You were not supposed to look stronger. You were not supposed to look lighter. You were not supposed to look untouched by what happened. Yet there you were, standing as proof that life continued without their permission. And this realization did something irreversible inside them. It made them question their choices. It made them replay moments they once dismissed. It made them wonder how someone they underestimated could become the very reflection of what they lost. This was not admiration. This was not nostalgia. This was shock mixed with regret, the kind that stays quiet on the outside but screams endlessly within. There is something you must understand now, and it is crucial to the meaning of this moment. When someone from your past sees you after a long time, they do not see who you are today first. They see who they thought you would become. They compare expectations to reality in a fraction of a second. And in your case, that comparison broke their inner script completely. They remembered the version of you they once knew, the one they thought would remain stuck, defined by that chapter, shaped by their influence or absence. But what they saw instead was evolution without explanation. Growth without announcement. Peace without validation. This is what stunned them. Not your appearance alone, but the energy of someone who no longer carries the weight they once placed on you. They noticed it in your posture. They felt it in your silence. They sensed it in the way you did not look back searching for approval. And that silent confidence became louder than any conversation ever could. It forced them to confront a painful realization. You did not need closure from them to move forward. You did not need answers to heal. You did not need their return to feel whole. And for someone who once believed they mattered more in your story, this truth landed like a quiet collapse. They walked away pretending nothing happened, but inside, something cracked that cannot be repaired with excuses. What makes this moment once in a lifetime is not that they saw you, but that they were not prepared for how seeing you made them feel about themselves. They thought time had placed them ahead, that life had rewarded their choices, that they had moved on successfully. But the mirror you unknowingly held up showed them otherwise. Your presence reminded them of who they were when they knew you, and who they promised themselves they would become but never did. That contrast was unbearable. They felt small without you saying a word. They felt exposed without you asking a question. They felt the weight of unfinished emotions, not because you reopened wounds, but because your healing highlighted their avoidance. This is the kind of shock that lingers long after the moment passes. It shows up late at night. It interrupts distractions. It rewrites memories they thought were settled. They begin to wonder when the shift happened. How did you become this composed? How did you let go? How did you rise quietly while they remained stuck replaying old narratives? And the most unsettling part for them is this. They no longer have access to you the way they once did. Not emotionally. Not energetically. Not mentally. That door did not slam shut. It closed softly. And that is what hurts the most. If you wish to express your support further, you have the option to give super thanks, with contributions of up to $20. Now hear this with absolute clarity, because this is where the deeper truth lives. This encounter was not meant to pull you backward. It was meant to show you how far you have already come. While they walked away shaken, you walked forward unchanged, because your growth is no longer dependent on being seen or recognized. You did not need their reaction to validate your transformation, yet their reaction confirms it without you asking. This is the power of silent evolution. You did not announce your healing. You did not prove anything publicly. You simply aligned with yourself. And when someone from your past crosses paths with that version of you, the impact is unavoidable. They feel the distance not in miles, but in consciousness. They realize you are no longer accessible to old patterns. Old dynamics do not work anymore. Old roles no longer fit. And this realization forces them into an internal reckoning. They ask themselves questions they avoided for years. What if I had treated them differently? What if I had stayed? What if I had grown too? These questions do not seek answers. They create discomfort. And discomfort is the price of seeing someone thrive beyond your reach. You become the reminder of a path they did not take. Not by intention. Not by revenge. Simply by living authentically. Finally, let this settle deeply within you, because this moment carries a message meant only for you. You were never meant to remain who you were in that chapter. You were meant to outgrow it so completely that your presence alone would speak volumes. Someone from your past being stunned is not about them wanting you back, nor is it about reconciliation. It is about recognition. Recognition that you were always more than the role they assigned you. Recognition that your worth did not diminish when they left. Recognition that your light did not depend on their attention. This is why the universe allowed this brief crossing of paths. Not to reopen wounds, but to close cycles silently. You are no longer the memory they control. You are the reality they cannot ignore. And as you continue forward, understand this clearly. Anyone who is stunned by your growth is simply meeting the version of you that emerges when survival turns into strength. This was not accidental. This was alignment. And this is only the beginning. Pay attention to this shift now, because something subtle but powerful has already begun moving beneath the surface since that moment they saw you. While you continued your life as usual, unaware or unconcerned, their inner world did not return to normal. The image of you stayed with them, replaying without permission, interrupting their routines, their conversations, their sleep. They began revisiting old scenes in their mind, not the ones where they felt in control, but the ones where they ignored signs, dismissed feelings, or walked away too easily. What shocked them was not just how you looked or how calm you seemed, but how unfamiliar you felt to them. You were no longer readable. They could not predict your thoughts. They could not access your emotions. The version of you they once understood had dissolved completely. And this loss of familiarity made them realize something uncomfortable. They no longer know you, yet they can feel you more strongly than ever. This contradiction unsettled them deeply. It forced them to accept that they lost access not because of distance, but because you outgrew the space where they once held influence. What followed next was not immediate action, but something far more intense. Silence mixed with obsession. They did not reach out. They did not ask about you openly. Instead, they observed from a distance, replaying every detail of that encounter, searching for meaning in your tone, your timing, your presence. They wondered if you noticed them. They wondered if you cared. They wondered if you felt the same jolt they did. But the truth is, what disturbed them most was not your reaction. It was your lack of one. You did not freeze. You did not falter. You did not try to be seen. That calm neutrality told them everything they feared. You are no longer emotionally anchored to their perception. This realization made them feel exposed. For the first time, they were the ones questioning their worth in your story. They were the ones feeling replaceable. And that role reversal hit them harder than any argument ever could. They felt the weight of irrelevance without you ever intending to make them feel that way. Understand this clearly now, because this is where the energy truly shifted. Your growth triggered a quiet awakening inside them, not of love alone, but of accountability. They began to recognize patterns they repeated, not just with you, but in other connections as well. Walking away. Avoiding depth. Choosing comfort over courage. Seeing you thrive without resentment or bitterness forced them to face the cost of those choices. They realized that the peace you now carry is something they still chase externally. And this realization planted a seed of regret, not loud, not dramatic, but persistent. The kind that lingers and grows. They started comparing their current life to the future they once imagined when they were connected to you. And in those comparisons, something became painfully clear. They underestimated you. They underestimated what you were capable of becoming. And they overestimated their role in your outcome. That miscalculation is what now haunts them quietly. Here is the revelation most people never talk about, and it is crucial to why this moment matters so deeply. When someone from your past is stunned by who you have become, it is not because you changed into someone new. It is because you finally returned to who you always were beneath survival. You shed the version of yourself that needed validation, explanation, or acceptance. And when they saw you, they did not see confidence alone. They saw freedom. Freedom from old wounds. Freedom from old expectations. Freedom from the need to be chosen. This kind of freedom is confronting to those who never found it within themselves. They sense that you are no longer waiting. Not for an apology. Not for clarity. Not for them. And that awareness created a quiet panic inside them, because it confirmed something irreversible. They missed their chance to grow alongside you. Now, all they can do is witness the result from afar. Let this final truth anchor itself within you, because it defines what comes next. This encounter was not meant to reopen communication. It was meant to seal your transformation. The universe allowed them to see you not so they could return, but so you could release the last unseen thread connecting you to that chapter. You do not owe them closure. Your existence is the closure. Their shock is evidence of your elevation. And as they continue to process what they felt, you will continue to rise, unaffected, aligned, and focused forward. Remember this. Anyone who is stunned by your growth is simply arriving late to a version of you that required courage, patience, and inner work they never witnessed. You are not moving ahead to prove anything. You are moving ahead because you finally chose yourself. And that choice has changed everything. My beloved child, there is a deeper layer to this story that most people never see, because it unfolds quietly, away from messages, calls, or visible actions. After that moment, when they returned to their private world, something began to unravel inside them. The version of themselves they had carefully constructed started to feel fragile. They questioned their confidence. They questioned their direction. They questioned whether they truly moved on, or merely distracted themselves long enough to forget. Seeing you activated a comparison they did not intend to make, yet could not avoid. They measured their inner peace against yours. They measured their growth against your calm certainty. And in doing so, they realized that while time passed for both of you, transformation happened unevenly. You used pain as a doorway. They used avoidance as a shield. This realization did not arrive dramatically. It arrived slowly, like a heavy truth settling into the chest, impossible to shake. They began to notice how often they thought of you, not as you were, but as you are now. And that distinction matters. Because longing for the past is nostalgia. Being shaken by the present is something far more unsettling. What intensified this inner storm was the awareness that they no longer have control over how you perceive them. Once, they believed they occupied a fixed position in your mind. Someone significant. Someone remembered strongly. Someone who mattered. But your composed energy during that encounter sent a message without words. You are no longer defining yourself by who left, who stayed, or who failed you. You are defining yourself by who you became despite it all. That realization made them feel invisible in a way they had never experienced before. Not ignored. Not rejected. Simply irrelevant to your evolution. And for someone who once believed they had an impact on your direction, this was deeply destabilizing. They began replaying moments where they could have shown up differently. Spoken honestly. Chosen depth over distance. But reflection does not rewrite history. It only highlights missed opportunities. And this awareness created a quiet ache that followed them everywhere, because they know now that your life no longer pauses at their memory. There is also something important happening on an energetic level, something subtle yet undeniable. When two paths cross after long separation, the exchange is not about words, but resonance. You did not carry resentment into that moment. You did not carry hope either. You carried presence. And presence is powerful. It reveals everything without confrontation. They felt it. The absence of emotional charge confused them. They expected tension. They expected unfinished business. Instead, they felt a strange stillness, as if the past had finally lost its grip on you. That stillness unsettled them more than anger ever could. Because anger would have meant you still cared. Silence would have meant distance. But peace meant completion. And completion is confronting to someone who is still carrying questions. They realized that whatever they did or did not do no longer defines your emotional landscape. You are no longer living in reaction. You are living in alignment. And that difference changes the entire dynamic forever. Now understand this carefully, because this is where the real shift becomes irreversible. Once someone sees you beyond the version they knew, they can never unsee it. Even if they try to move on again. Even if they distract themselves. Even if they pretend that moment meant nothing. It has already redefined how they see you. You are no longer a memory that fits neatly into a story they tell themselves. You are living proof that growth does not require permission. This awareness will surface again and again in their life, especially when they face moments of dissatisfaction or stagnation. Your image will appear not as temptation, but as contrast. A reminder of what happens when someone chooses inner work over denial. And while they may never speak these realizations aloud, they will carry them silently. Because some truths are too personal to share. They will continue forward with this new awareness, knowing that the chapter with you did not end because it failed, but because it fulfilled its purpose. Let this final message settle into your core, because it belongs to you alone. You did not lose anything when they walked away. You gained yourself. And now, without effort, without explanation, without intention, you reflect that truth back to those who once doubted your strength. Someone from your past being stunned is not a sign that you need to look back. It is confirmation that you moved forward correctly. You are no longer waiting for recognition. Recognition finds you naturally. You are no longer searching for validation. Validation appears in silence. And as you continue this path, remember this. The most powerful transformations are not announced. They are noticed. And the ones who notice late are often the ones who underestimated the journey. You are exactly where you are meant to be. And what comes next will only deepen that alignment. My beloved child, what happened after that moment did not stop with reflection or silent realization. Something else began to form inside them, something heavier, something more difficult to escape. They started noticing patterns in their present life that suddenly felt hollow. Conversations felt repetitive. Achievements felt empty. Relationships felt surface level. And they could not understand why, until the truth surfaced slowly. Seeing you awakened a standard they once ignored. Not a standard you demanded, but one your growth naturally set. They realized that you did not just move on. You moved upward. And upward movement creates distance that cannot be crossed by nostalgia or excuses. This is where the shock deepened into awareness. They saw clearly that the version of themselves standing today is not aligned with the future they once imagined. And this realization came with discomfort, because it forced them to admit that comfort had replaced courage in their life. They chose what was easy. You chose what was real. And now, the contrast stands undeniable. At the same time, they began to question how little they truly knew about your inner strength. They remembered moments when you were quiet and misunderstood that silence as weakness. They recalled times when you accepted less and assumed you had no choice. But now they see the truth. You were not weak. You were patient. You were not settling. You were learning. And patience, when paired with self-respect, creates transformation that shocks those who only saw your struggle, not your resolve. This realization unsettled them deeply, because it rewrote their internal narrative. They could no longer place themselves above you in the story. They could no longer see you as someone who needed saving or guiding. You became someone who walked through difficulty and emerged refined. And this shift stripped them of the illusion they once held about power, control, and significance. They understood now that you were never behind. You were simply becoming. What made this even more intense was the awareness that they cannot re-enter your life the way they once imagined. Not because you blocked them. Not because you rejected them. But because the version of you they now see does not leave doors open for confusion. Your energy communicates boundaries without confrontation. Your calm communicates clarity without explanation. And this is confronting for someone who once relied on uncertainty to maintain connection. They sense that if they approached you now, it would require honesty, accountability, and growth they are not sure they possess yet. This is why they hesitate. This is why they remain silent. Not out of indifference, but out of self-awareness. They know that your presence would demand authenticity. And authenticity is difficult for those who avoided it for years. So they observe from afar, caught between admiration and regret, knowing that the distance between you is no longer physical. It is internal. Here is the once-in-a-lifetime truth that makes this moment so powerful. You became the evidence of what happens when someone chooses themselves without bitterness. You did not harden. You did not close off. You did not become cynical. You became clear. And clarity is intimidating to those who live in emotional fog. When they saw you, they did not just see success or peace. They saw consequence. The consequence of staying the same. The consequence of avoiding inner work. The consequence of leaving something meaningful unfinished. And this awareness is not something they can simply forget. It will surface again at crossroads, at moments of dissatisfaction, at times when they question why fulfillment feels distant. You will not haunt them as a person. You will exist as a reminder. A reminder of what alignment looks like when someone commits fully to their growth. Carry this understanding with quiet confidence, because it belongs to you. You did not rise to be seen. You rose because staying small was no longer an option. And now, anyone from your past who encounters you is forced to confront the truth within themselves. Your growth does not punish them. It educates them. It does not seek revenge. It reveals reality. And as you continue forward, untouched by their internal process, know this. The shock they felt was not about losing you. It was about realizing who they could have become if they had chosen differently. You are not a chapter they outgrew. You are the chapter that outgrew them. And this understanding changes the energy of your entire path moving.